Hello friends of TV Agro, how are you? My name is Daniel Rivera, I am the creator of Vita Garden, and today we are going to talk about carnivorous plants. Well, there are a great variety of carnivorous plants, more than 500 species around the world. And today we are going to talk a little about them. One of them, and perhaps the most common, is the Venus flytrap. Its scientific name is Dionaea muscipula, and it is a plant that brings a part of a normal plant, as it is a non-carnivorous leaf, which is called another plant, another part, which is the carnivorous leaf. As we can see in the case of this plant, its carnivorous part is traps that have the shape of mouths. These mouths have in their interior some small hairs. These little hairs, what they do is that when they are stimulated by movement, immediately the trap is activated. This movement is activated by the insects that fall inside them. They secrete a kind of enzymes, and what these enzymes do is that they release a sweet aroma. This aroma is not perceptible by us or by pets, but it is perceptible by small insects. So when they feel attracted by this aroma, what they do is that they arrive directly to the trap, they stimulate these little hairs, and the trap is activated. However, in spite of this, there are many variations of the Dionaea muscipula or Venus flytrap. They are called cultivars, and the cultivars have been plants that have been genetically modified from this one, which is the main plant, the typical Dionaea muscipula. In this case we have a Dionaea muscipula big mouth, and basically this one differs from the typical one because its traps are much larger. They can measure up to about 5 or 6 centimeters long, and in addition to that, if we compare it with the typical Dionaea muscipula, you can see that its teeth also tend to be a little more elongated. We also have on the other hand another cultivar that is called Dionaea muscipula UK South. This plant has been modified in the United Kingdom, and basically what is different, as you can see, its teeth are saw-shaped. They are much shorter, and the inside of its traps is really a little more reddish. We also have other species of carnivorous plants such as the Nepenthes. The Nepenthes no longer have active traps, that is to say they do not move, nor are they simply mouths, but they have a more complex structure. In this case they also have a part of the leaf that is not carnivorous, but its carnivorous part is much larger, as you can see. These structures are called jars, and basically what the jars do is that first of all they have a lid. The lid protects the jars from the rain so that the jar does not fill completely with water in times of quite a lot of precipitation, and for this reason the insects that fall inside will not escape. And besides that, in the upper part, it also releases in the same way some enzymes that really are a little more powerful in some occasions. Several Nepenthes, you can see how the liquid that they secrete to attract the insects begins to spill over the lid. And what this does is to attract the insects in the same way as in the Venus flytrap. These enzymes, what they do is to decrease the reaction of the nervous system of the insect. In this way they lose their motor capacity and fall internally into the jar. As we can see, the inside of the jar is quite big, and as soon as the insects fall, the plant releases a kind of fluids that start to disintegrate the insect inside the jar and absorb the nutrients that it has. These carnivorous plants have also been really a modification, because they are found in places where there are not many, because the conditions are not really favorable for a normal plant. So they have evolved through time and have chosen since they cannot get their nutrients from the soil, they have chosen to get their nutrients from external agents such as insects. In this case we have another species that is called Pinguicula. Is in a variety of Pinguicula. At first glance looks like a very normal plant, can suddenly be associated with even with a succulent plant, but it really is not. If we focus a little more on its leaves we can see that it has small hairs, and at the tip of these hairs there are tiny droplets. These droplets contain a gel called mucilage, and mucilage is a fairly sticky gel that what it does is that as soon as an insect lands on the leaves is immediately stuck there, being very very difficult that it can really escape, as we can see here. Because there are some insects that fell on the plant. In this way these plants get the nutrients that the soil in which they are planted lacks. And if you were wondering if the carnivorous plants also bloom, it turns out that yes, as you can see here, it is in a process of reproduction in which it is flowering. We also have another very common species, very striking and very appealing for lovers of carnivorous plants, and in the species of Sundew capensis of sundews. This species is called especially Drosera spatulata, and well, is a plant that also, as we can see inside, has leaves a part that is not carnivorous and another part that is carnivorous. And in that part carnivorous has some small hairs called trichomes at its tip, also bring mucilage. That is to say that they also work in the same way that the penguin works. Unlike the penguin, this plant, if it has a little movement, is not as active as the Venus flytrap. But when the insect is very large, for example a fly, a moth, which can exceed the size of the leaf, as such what immediately makes the trichomes is that they begin to close so that they can touch with their mucilage to the insect, and to be able to stick it more so that it cannot escape. Here we also have another species of sundew. This is a Sundew capensis, in the same system as the spatulata, only that the spatulata grows attached to the ground in the form of rosette, while the capensis grows vertically, and we can see that it also works with the same system of house. We also have the Aracenas. This one in particular is an Aracena scarlet bell that is waking up from hibernation, and well, hibernation, you may wonder what it is. Well, it turns out that some plants, carnivorous and others that are not carnivorous, do this process of hibernation. And basically they do it in cold seasons when they consider that the food is not going to be easy to reach them. The easiest option for them is to enter a rest period. In this rest period the plant has not died. It simply stops producing its leaves or its traps and enters a period in which it will not consume too much energy. And in this way it can survive. Here we have another species, that is the Sarracenia. This type of plants also have a kind of leaf that is not carnivorous, and in its upper part is the carnivorous part. This Sarracenia is of the scarlet bell species, and at this moment it is waking up from hibernation. You may have heard the term basically associated to animals, but it also happens to carnivorous plants and in some other types of plants. And this is basically when the plant is in a too cold environment where it considers that it is not going to find food in an adequate way. So what happens is that it enters in a resting state, in which what it does is that it simply stops producing traps, because it knows that it will not be able to hunt easily, and in this way what it will do is to save energy. it does not mean that the plant is going to die as such. Although it seems, however, inside it remains alive, simply that in a process of rest. When the environment and the climate returns to be appropriate for it, what will happen is that it will simply start to produce traps again, as we see that this time it is already waking up from its hibernation. And for lovers of collectors of carnivorous plants, we also have the Darlingtonia, or also known as cobra plant, is a plant that occurs in California, and is a really very nice plant, very curious and very striking, because leaves basically look like the shape of a cobra. And what these plants basically do is that its top is quite translucent. Then they have an opening at the bottom of the leaves, and this opening, what it does is that when some kind of insect enters through there, when it sees that the upper part is translucent, it thinks that it can go out to the other side, so it does not consider that it is going to be in danger, so the insect enters, and once it enters the whole body of the Darlingtonia, there are some little hairs that are pointing downwards. What these little hairs do is that as soon as the insect enters, it will not be able to get out of there. Inside it also has some liquids that work as a digestive system, in which what they will do is to be able to absorb the nutrients of the plant. They will not be able to absorb the nutrients from the insect. Well, this time we are going to show you how the house system of a Venus flytrap is activated. We grow special food for them, and we are going to see how it reacts. Remember that the plant has some little hairs inside its trap. When these little hairs are stimulated by movement, what they are going to do is that they are going to activate the trap that is going to close. In this case, we see how when the hairs are stimulated, what the trap does immediately is to close. Once it closes, it does not mean that the insect is already dead. Why? Because the movement of the insect inside the trap will continue to stimulate the trap to remain closed while releasing the enzymes that will help the insect to decompose. As you could see here, there are several. It is a colony of plants, that is to say that there are several, there is not just one. Then just by feeding a single leaf, this will serve to provide energy to the whole plant. And well friends, this has been all for today. Thank you very much for watching us. Remember that you can also follow our social networks for any questions you have. And until next time, thank you very much.